We are back. Taking a deep breath. All right, my loves. Okay, loves, we are back. Welcome to day 3 of Unleashing Your Story. Day 3, okay? That makes this Wednesday. And for the next tonight, tomorrow, and Friday, we're really going to be crafting a system for your success. The first day was partially an overview and an intro. Day 2 was definitely a lot of emotional blocks and clearing and looking at that. For the next 3 days, we are going to be building your unique system. And the thing about this is really tricky because as women, we're really used to, actually, as humans in the modern world, we are trained to look outside of ourselves um, for how to do things. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it sort of works, but we've really, for the most part, been trained to disconnect from ourselves. So, for the next couple of days, we're going to be looking at some examples, we're going to be playing with some possibilities, and I want us, again, it's always about the metaphor and the example. We're like cooks in the kitchen, okay? And we've got all these ingredients. With the same ingredients, each one of us is going to make a slightly different recipe, but we're all going to have access to all the ingredients, okay? So we're just going to play today. If you are here, either live or catching the replay, just say hello. If you're catching the replay, give me a hashtag replay so I know to check in with you later. As always, comment, engage, ask questions, use the comment space like a dialogue, like we are in the same room together. So I appreciate you being here. I'm here, you're here, we're ready to rock and roll. Today's going to be a little bit different, but we are going to be looking at things through this lens of structuring your success. Elizabeth, of course it's you live, hashtag live. Rockstar Elizabeth. If I had stickers, you would get serious stickers. I don't really know where to start. There's lots of places. But actually, let me start here. Is that I get to show up in these spaces to support you all every time we have one of these free trainings and in everything I do, because Red Thread is all about accelerating your growth, your personal growth, your professional growth, your spiritual growth, as well as amplifying the impact that you can have, amplifying your message, allowing you to reach more people so that you can do the healing for yourself and do the healing that you want to do for the world. So this is the micro and the macro. And every time my team sits down to work on a project with someone, we take a minute, and this is what I want you to do now. We're going to listen and we're going to connect to ourselves. I want you to pay attention first to the micro, okay? Why writing is something that you need to do just for you, okay? Just for you. Again, we did this on day 1. Where do you feel it in your body? What's your why? Really, really connecting with yourself and your personal process and why this is important to you as a being. And while you hang on to that, I also want you to expand your attention out into the world and to hear sort of the whispers. And as our name suggests, I want you to visualize a red thread connecting you with every soul on the planet into the future and in the present who can benefit from the story you have to share. Okay? I want you to reach out into the universe and feel that connection. And if you can hold on to your why this is important for you personally, regardless of anybody else, and all the people that your story can touch and help and heal and teach, if you can do both of those things at the same time, then you're really, really connected. And that's how we start our meetings. We really think about like why we're here. Tina made it. You made it, Tina. Welcome, my love. And thank you for sharing what your story is about in a previous comment. I really appreciate that. So when we can hold on to our why and how this is just a purely personal thing that our writing is for us, and simultaneously feeling that red thread that connects us with every single person out into the future that we will never meet, into the universe that needs to hear what we have to say, then we're really holding on to our why. Okay. And when we have a strong why, then the how appears. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time looking at um, a process of acknowledging our blocks, acknowledging the obstacles, and uh, and navigating them, not overcoming them, not avoiding them, but like looking them in the eye and saying, "Hey, what are you doing here? How can we tango?" Okay. So so that's what yesterday was, and I asked a question that I thought was interesting. Um, Elizabeth, I might call out your comment. You say you don't, because I asked about writer's block. You say you don't really have writer's block, but it's all the other blocks that get in the way. And my definition of a writer's block is anything that keeps you from the paper, anything that keeps you from your story. And and that's just my own definition of writer's block. It does not have to be yours. It doesn't mean that either of us is right or either of us is wrong. I thought it was really interesting to hear that concept that like writer's block could mean something very specific. I think of writer's blocks as any of those obstacles that stops us, that holds us back. Whether it be a purely logistical thing, like I've got a job, or I'm a parent, or there's no internet and there's no electricity. Whatever the obstacles are, I think of those as writer's block. But I do appreciate recognizing that not everybody sees that term the same way. I want to start by telling you a story. So, a few years ago, I was in a really deep process with my mentor, and something kept on coming up that I would go through these moments and I could just like write. I could just write, and then just poured out of me. And that felt so amazing and so good. I wasn't actually even judging or measuring the quality, but it was just coming out. It just felt really free. And then, because I had these weekly meetings with my mentor, and then there'd be a week where I was like, I can't. It was just pouring out before, and now there's like nothing. I can't write a sentence to save my life. I can hardly write a grocery list. What the hell is wrong with me? And then, a few weeks would pass, and I would just be ravenous for reading. I could just read books after books after books. I could listen to my friends talk at the coffee shop. I could watch movies till the cows came home. I could just take it all in, but I couldn't write for anything. And then, this may not come as a surprise to you because you're both all very, very intelligent, then it would switch and I'd go back and all I could do was write and I couldn't force myself to read a page if I tried. And I was like, where's my afternoon reading habit? Where's my nighttime book? What the hell's wrong with me? First of all, anytime anyone's asking a question of what the hell's wrong with me, you're asking the wrong question. It's a question that will have plenty of answers because your brain is a fascinating organism that will not stop until it has sufficient answers to satisfy the question. So whatever question you input, you will have answers. And so I had lots of answers for the what is wrong with me question. But there was nothing wrong with me. I, in that phase, recognized that I personally had a very, very strong and distinct flux. And I call it now my receptive phase and my productive phase. And I can very clearly go through them. Some people can go through them in a day. Mine are on a couple of week waves. But as soon as I recognized that system, that pattern, I no longer poured energy into what's wrong with me? How could I do it differently? Why can't I write 30 pages and read 60 pages every damn day of my life? I'm not even going to ask that question again because it doesn't need to be put out into the universe. And so I recognized this contradiction in self of the back and forth of there were times when I could write, create, cook, paint. I could garden, I could do everything out here. And then it's like that faucet got turned off, and I was like, Phil, feed me, give me things to think about, give me things to chew on, give me things to digest. And so that was just a really interesting pattern. And I'm going to ask you now if I, either part of that story, any parts of that story resonate with you, um, because we're going to be beginning to gather some ingredients for the recipe that we're going to cook together to really figure out what your system of success looks like. And what we talked about yesterday is sort of a system of struggle, the way that we are prone to really have a system of failure, a system of blocks and fears and things that keep us disconnected, things that keep us stuck. Over the next couple of days, and the whole point of this Unleash Your Story is to tease out the threads that can really make this easeful for you, because it's possible to do this with ease. It is possible to set up a system and have a story pour out of you. And I'm going to get to that on Friday and tell you a couple of my own stories about how both of these books were born and created relatively quickly and relatively easeful, um, because I really believe that it's possible. And so, one of the obstacles that I keep hearing come up for women is it's really hard to write a book. It takes a really long time to write a book. And if that's your mental map, if your story to yourself is that it takes 2 years to write a book, then it's going to take 2 years at least to write a book. You might spend a year and a half dragging your feet because it takes so long to write a book, and then it might take 2 years after that. On the other hand, and bragging's an interesting thing. My mentor, again, thinks women should brag. And so I'm going to brag for a moment as an example and give you permission to brag when and where and however possible in your own lives. Last year, the year of the pandemic, I published 5 books. It was the first year that I had published as prolifically. I had contributed to things before, but last year I did these 2 solo books, How Change Really Happens and Date Yourself, 2 solo books. I wrote and published from scratch those 2 books and contributed to 3 other multi-author projects. And so that was a really, really prolific year. I don't have to tell you that there was also a global pandemic, and my daughter, who was 5, was 24/7 in the house with me. And so my mental map now is 5 books a year. But if I had this mental map that a book takes 2 years to write, it would be a decade from now before I was ready for that. And so, just the concepts that we have about how things work, if you think it's hard, or if you think it's going to take a long time, or if you think you need a whole lot of time or money, then just that concept is holding you back, and it is the opposite of a structure for success that you need. And so I'm here to plant some very big seeds that I hope sprout very soon for you, that it does not have to be, it can be hard. It does not have to be hard. That is entirely up to you, and it does not have to take a long time. Again, that is also up to you and up to the support and the system that you build for yourself. That's also not to say that like you have to write a book in 3 months. You do not have to. But if there's a part of you that was like, oh shit, if I could have a book out by August, I would be tickled pink, then listen to that part of yourself too, and let's create some space for her, right? What comes next? So I want to spend a little bit of time actually with this. I took notes in 2 different places today because I was really feeling it. So today we're going to really look at filling your well, because one of the things that you need to do in order to have success in this easeful way of writing is just to be overflowing with energy, motivation, and just that like joie de vivre, that inspiration. Okay, the word inspiration, as you know, I get super geeky about words. It's partly because I'm dyslexic and I read things funny, but it's also just because I had to struggle so hard with language that I really look at things and take them apart. And I studied history for a long time. I want to know where things come from. So the root of inspiration is spirit. Inspiration means you're in spirit, en spira. Okay. It also has to do with respiration. It's the same like re-spiriting. It's the same idea. And respiration, as I was sharing earlier in my like receptive productive, is this. And for life to be, we need both, all right? And so today I really want us to play with, and if you have the workbook in front of you, there's a couple of key ideas. I want you to play with this idea of how you fill your well. And how you fill your well can be absolutely different than how I fill my well. And what you need this month can be different than what you need next month. But I really want you to contemplate, what is that regenerative, what is that like thing that inspires you? And there's a list, so make a list, because as it says in your workbook, 80% of writing is not writing. And I usually am really good at quoting where I get things and giving credit where due, because I think it's really, really important. um, but I can't remember who said 80% of writing is not writing. uh, it might have been in one of the master classes with Atwood, Margaret Atwood, but I can't remember. So, but 80% of writing's not writing, which is why we're spending most of this week not writing. We are examining things, we are clearing blocks, we are building systems so that the writing can flow, and the struggle and the pushing and the forcing, it doesn't happen, okay? Again, as I was thinking about tonight's session earlier today, somehow I equated uh, sort of an ineffectual creative process as like bad sex. Yeah, it's sex. Yeah, you can go through the motions. Yeah, you can call it sex, but it wasn't really fun and it didn't feel really great. And you're not like, oh, let me do that again. It's just like, okay, fine. And I don't want you to feel that way about your sex or your writing ever, ever. I've definitely had my fair share of bad sex and bad writing, and I'm over it. No more. Okay? And so we're going to spend the time, because the time that we spend now doing that 80% of writing that's not writing is going to be so effective in supporting you through the process, so that when you sit down to write, it is orgasmic. It is that good. It's in spirit, right? And Elizabeth, yeah, creativity. Do you like criatura? So a criatura is like a creature, right? And I think that's a Spanish root word. But so there's like a creature, right, that you're helping bring about. Inspiration and this concept of genius. Liz Gilbert does this really nice TED talk on it. I'll drop the link in here later, where she talks about when you are clear and when you show up on the page, then inspiration is out there in the universe and it'll come find you, that you are the vessel, you're the channel for inspiration. But you can't be busy and you can't be forcing it and you can't be like thinking about a million things, because you're too distracted to receive what's there. And she again gets all what's etymological, of like the history of the words. We used to say that person has a genius, like a genie, like a spirit that has come to them, not that person is a genius. Because now if we think, oh, so and so is a genius, that's a lot of responsibility and that's a lot of pressure. And then you have to like show up like a genius, instead of just being available for a genius to arrive and whisper in your ear. So just some things to play with. So how do you clear your channel, and how do you prepare yourself and support yourself to be that vessel for inspiration? This is your main challenge for the night. How do you fill your well? Okay. Everybody does it differently. I shared last week that I took some downtime around my menstrual cycle because that was really critical for me. I've been tracking my bleed for a number of years and recognizing um, how that rhythm, if I can rest when it's time to rest, then when I'm ovulating or sort of in alignment, it's like the full moon and the new moon, those rhythms are really helpful patterns for me to recognize I can get seriously incredible amounts of shit done in a short amount of time, a couple weeks after I rest. if I don't rest and I'm just trying to produce and show up and crank shit out all the time, it does not work. I burn myself out. I show up and it's just like, I'm here, but it's sort of like driving down the freeway at high speeds in a low gear, and it just, I'm trying, but I'm just not getting there. So in the comments, if you will, what are some things that fill your well? What uh, what enlivens you? What sparks your curiosity, gets you into this sensuous space where you're noticing colors and textures and sounds and smells in a way that you're just like really alive? What processes, what habits? Tina, I think actually earlier you shared in terms of writer's block, like going to the water, being by the ocean. Um, that that to me is a filling your well so that you can move through the next thing. Because what I want us to do is put together a list of things that people do to fill their well. Um, I had an interview that'll air next week or the week after with a poet, and she says it's this the combination of the high intensity and then the quiet and reflective. And there's a trolley stop that she likes to go to because every 15 minutes she gets this flux and flow that I was talking about. You know, the trolley arrives, there's this bustling of activity, everybody goes their separate ways, the trolley leaves, and then it's quiet and it's peaceful. And she's the only one in the trolley station for 15 minutes and she gets to sort of digest and descargar, how do you say, a download or uh, whatever the thing is in English. Sometimes I forget. Um, and she just gets to digest and process that part of the experience. And then lo and behold, 15 minutes later, it happens all over again. And so that was her rhythm, a 15-minute rhythm. I like a 2-week rhythm, but that's just me. Um, the Artist's Way, I mentioned it yesterday because Julia Cameron's Artist's Way is where the morning pages practice comes from, and I'll talk more about that in depth tomorrow. Well, another activity she recommends is a weekly artist's date. She calls it a weekly artist date. You can have a writer's date with yourself. Um, I have a book that just has like 1-page chapters of writing activities, and there's so many just fun ideas in there. You go to a restaurant, and on we make a list of all the sounds that you hear, and then you make another list of all the smells, and then you mix them together, and you like cross sort of mad lib those words, and you just come up with playful ways of engaging. Okay, so there's just so many things that you can do to stir that imagination, to feed that inspiration, and they're not always writing activities. So your writer's date doesn't have to be anything about writing. Go have a picnic. That's your writer's date. Okay? Be in a place. Do something that you don't ordinarily do. Witness something unique and be in that moment, sort of alive. Um, they say the reason people love traveling so much is because our senses are heightened, and a 3-day trip can feel like forever because everything's new. And when everything's new, our senses are on such high alert, and it's really, really cueing into that aliveness within you. And so you don't have to go away for 3 days. You can go on a different route to work. If I walk my dogs every day, I will admit, almost all the time I walk exactly the same route. I pick up my flower. Where's my flower? I pick up my flower at the same tree every day, and I just do the same thing over and over again. When I veer off that path 1 block, I see the world in a whole new light. So whatever fills your well, I guarantee you, doing some of those well-filling activities on a regular basis is or are some of the key elements for structuring your success in this creative process. Because uh, you you know cliche, you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you are running around all the time, if you are overburdened, overscheduled, super busy in 1,000 places all at once, if you sit down to write and half of your brain is trying to figure out what you forgot at the grocery store, whatever you're trying to write is going to keep getting distracted by like vanilla extract. whatever, whatever the hell other thing that you're trying to do. And again, that does not mean you need, I just read somewhere, Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, 1 year, all of her friends got together, and for Christmas, they gave her enough money to live for a year. That's nice. Um, and they said, we need you to write your next book. That book was To Kill a Mockingbird. That's amazing. I don't expect any of my friends or any of your friends to come together and give you a year's salary so that you can do this writing. I'm not saying they shouldn't. If anybody out there wants to, send us a message. But I'm not going to wait for it either. Okay? So that does, and what I mean is that we can fill our wells and we can structure our own success. We don't have to wait for a Harper Lee intervention moment. We can fill our wells in the tiniest little ways, right? Just tiny little goticas, little drops, because it doesn't take a lot to fill, okay? When you connected with your why and you connected with the people who need your story, you're like breaking the time space continuum. You are in the quantum field. And when you're in the quantum field, you can do incredibly big things in relatively small and sort of effortless, like proportionally, we would say, well, oh, that was a big thing for a small amount of effort. In the quantum field, when you are like micro and macro, you can do crazy amounts of shit, right? Um, so for me, some of my well filling things always involve rest, rejuvenation, um, feeding myself. Cooking is really good for me. I love a good garden activity, being outdoors, putting my feet in the grass, the earthing, the actual positivity, negativity charge of the earth that we need so badly. Um, Spending some time off of the internet. I have recently reinstituted Sundays like digital detox because I forget how much I'm addicted to being online. I've only been a couple weeks in, and I swear to you, every Sunday I feel like I'm being punished by myself. I'm like, but I just want to. Oh, let me just. I'm like, no, I know that I need this in order to show up full on for 6 days in a row. So, like, give yourself a beat. So, whatever your well filling things are, and again, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, or you are not blazing out a list of like, oh, I know I need more of these things, I know these things fill me, even if the things that are the well fillings is like saying no to invitations, what are the things that have you just bubbling over with jubilation and energy and focus? What are those things? Because you need to know, okay? You are going to be creating your own recipe. And if you're making soup and you don't have any water, it is going to be one dry ass soup. So, what fills your well? Um, I have a bunch of other ideas, but I really want to be careful not to overload you. Um, the last thing that I do want to share, though, today is this the dichotomy and the necessary opposition that we need from both sort of our own masculine energy, how we show up and provide and protect and support our creative space. Masculine energy is about providing and protecting. So, how are you providing and protecting the possibility for this creation? How are you defending your own time and your own space? Because you have the ability to do that. We are creatures in a really masculine world, and so we've learned a lot of masculine energies, but we haven't always used them to serve us, especially serve us in our deepest creative process. So, how are you? How can you use your masculine capacity, your masculine energy, to provide and protect a safe container for this inspiration, so that your well can fill? Okay, if your well is like a sieve, it doesn't matter how much energy you putting stuff in, it's always just going to drain out the bottom. So what do you need to create a strong container. So whether it's a physical space, an energetic space, an uninterrupted hour, what container do you need to build for yourself with that masculine energy? How do I provide and protect this space for myself? And then the opposite energy is the feminine energy. And that is just the sensuous, that is the go with the flow, that is in the inspiration. But she really only lets herself go free when she knows she's safe, when she knows that she's not just going to trickle out the bottom. Okay. And so we need both. We need that dichotomy of energies. It's why I talk about this flux, the productive and the receptive, and the filling and the creating, and the back and the forth. And it's the core of what I'm teaching next month in the 29-day feminine creative process, because it's the opposite really of the mechanized show up every day, slam it out, and just sort of like the bad sex approach to writing of just like do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. So I want you to play with these ideas. There's been a lot in here tonight about the dichotomies, about the different energies. What masculine strength can you use for yourself? What feminine strength can you call on? And then how do you fill your well? Those are the questions for the day. My daughter's in the bath and she's calling for me, so I'm going to wrap us up. Looking forward to hear your thoughts, your reflections. Share in the group as always. We're going to be back on Thursday and Friday. Thursday, we're going to take your recipe for success a little bit further. And then Friday, we are absolutely just going to polish it off, knock it out of the park. Okay? Time to go. Bye. I love you. Thanks.